Y'all see the title, man. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. You're like, yo, this dude Recon, he uses any excuse possible to talk about his boy Togashi. You're damn right, man. If you give me a platform, an opportunity to talk about Yoshihiro Togashi, especially when I get to talk about specifically Hunter x Hunter 2011, bro, the greatest crossover in the history of anything, Yoshihiro Togashi and Madhouse, are you kidding me? So I'm gonna take advantage of that all day. Especially because y'all see the hat, man. It's your boy Snoopy. It's December time, man. It's finally December. The hiatus is over. And because it's finally December, man, I get to finally reveal what I have planned for this month, man. I have been super excited for this ever since. I don't remember when it was that I came up with it, but whenever I did, I was like, you know what? I really want to talk about the stuff that I really enjoyed in this decade from 2010 until now. What were the things that really impacted? What were my favorite things that I experienced within this decade, man? And you already know why I had to start this off with the Hunter x Hunter greatest. Are you kidding me, son? Listen, bro. Y'all, look at the profile picture. Look at him. You know, forget the fact that he's prime Yusuke, right? Just look at him and tell me what you think, dog. This channel is Hunter x Hunter, man. Like, yo, listen to me. I created this channel to talk about One Piece. That is a 100% factual shoot. I created this channel because I wanted more people to talk about One Piece with. And then, of course, brought Bleach on because I really love that series. Started talking about One Piece and Bleach. Then, naturally, Naruto came along. And then we started talking about some more things. But my original intention was to just talk about One Piece. And after those series ended, I was going to keep it a One Piece exclusive channel. But then I got into this. Listen, man. In late 2013, early 2014, I went on one of the greatest binging experiences I have ever had. And it has been one of those binging experiences that has always stuck with me as being like one of the top ones. One of the top ones. It might be because after I binged One Piece, I was looking for another long-running series that I would enjoy as much as that, to that extent. And when I finally found it, and not only that, but I was able to share that experience here on YouTube. I was not doing reactions, but I was doing, y'all know how I did the Monogatari videos? That's exactly how I did the Hunter x Hunter videos. Like, I would just watch a few episodes of Hunter x Hunter, come on here, talk about it, leave, go back and watch some more episodes. And it was just such a fun time, and I'll never forget that initial experience for multiple reasons, right? One of them being, of course, just the overall enjoyment, being truly immersed in a series like that, and being reminded of how truly amazing this medium can be. I was reminded of that multiple times while going through Hunter x Hunter. But I don't think I had ever gone through an anime at the very least, because of course on the manga side I had experienced some really wonderful stories, but on the anime side I was still very, I'm not going to say new because I've been watching it for a long time, but I still hadn't experienced a lot of my favorites in anime yet at that point in time. So whenever I got into Hunter x Hunter, it kind of like raised that level of how I expected other series to be at. Like Hunter x Hunter was from then on like, yo, this right here is what I consider to be the creme de la creme. Like, yo, this is my baby, this is the greatness. And that's really what set the bar at the time. And I'll just never forget those 2 days that I had off, Martin Luther King Day and the day after, the Tuesday after, which I normally did a bingo day at my old job. And we weren't able to come in. So I spent those 2 days just going through Hunter x Hunter, and I binged York New on Martin Luther King Day and Greed Island on the next day. And then in just a couple more days, I was caught up to where they were at in the Khmer Ant arc, and since it's history from then on, son. It's history from then on. This series, you know, there's two things that I feel like people who have a favorite anything can relate to. And that is, how do you feel, or that your favorites normally touch one of these two, if not both. How does this make you feel when you're in the moment? And how does this make you feel whenever you're not watching it? What I mean by that is, whenever there's certain series that you experience, or a game or movie, where in the moment you're super immersed and you're loving it, and then when you leave it, it's gone. You're just like, okay, it happened, right? But there's other things that leave a long-lasting experience on you. And there's other things that, even though in the moment you're like, am I really enjoying this? Am I not really enjoying this? But by the time you get to the end, it leaves like this massive impression on you to where you're like, Flagnards, that was incredible. And it sticks with you for a long time. So there's always those two differences. Like, for anything that you experience, is it one of those series that sticks with you for a long time, even whenever you're not going through it? Or is it something that you only enjoy whenever it's in the moment? Let me talk about how I feel about Hunter x Hunter, right? Hunter x Hunter, to me, I don't think I've ever enjoyed an anime as much as I enjoy Hunter x Hunter in terms of in-the-moment immersion. I feel like once I turn on an episode of Hunter x Hunter, I don't stop it until I turn it off. That's just the amount of immersion that I have within the story and the way that it's set up, to where it always keeps me so invested. And yes, it does that with the manga too, but I feel like specifically with the anime and the way that it's directed and handled, it has my attention for all 24 minutes. And that's very, very hard to do. That's a very, very hard thing to do, but I feel like Hunter x Hunter was the one series that, in terms of both of those categories, one that, in the moment, how do you feel about this? And then the other thing, it does leave a long-lasting impact in terms of like Flagnards. Do you think about it a lot? In the moment while watching Hunter x Hunter, I really could make a case for it being my favorite series ever. I really, really could. Because it's kind of like the same way that I feel like whenever I'm reading a One Piece or like one of my favorites on the manga, like a Super Run or something. Because while I'm in the moment reading those, I'm like, God, man, I absolutely adore these. But what separates the favorites from, or what separates like them on the list, is how do I feel with them off the field? Like, how do I feel about certain series whenever I'm not experiencing it? But Hunter x Hunter, when I am experiencing it, I am going through it, anime specifically, it is like, I might even say that I have it higher than Gintama in just that field of like Flagnards. When I'm going through a Hunter x Hunter episode, it's like, yo, there's nothing better. Like, there's not like, yo, this is amazing. But off of the whenever I'm not thinking about it, see, when I'm not when I'm not thinking about it, or when I'm not watching it, and I'm thinking about it, just thinking about it back on retrospective, it's where it changes. Because you see, the reason why Gintama means so much to me is because of how I feel about it whenever I'm not experiencing it, of how it hits here. Hunter x Hunter, instead of hitting here, is a series that hits up here. A lot. On many different levels. But specifically on the stuff that I really, really want to do. Which is, of course, to tell stories and to write, right? And so, that's the reason why I always say that Togashi, to me, is my favorite author. Because after I got into Hunter x Hunter and I caught up and all that stuff, I really did some research into Togashi himself, because I really wanted to know how it is that he wrote this. Because Hunter x Hunter to me was so fascinating, because it's within the same genre and magazine as these other series, and yet it felt like it didn't follow the same rules. But that's where I was mistaken. It does follow the same rules. It's just the ambition is on a different level than other things that I had experienced. And I had not realized that was something that could possibly be a thing until I experienced Hunter x Hunter. And so whenever I went back and I researched Togashi's background, read all of his other series, watched all of his other series, even gave Hunter x Hunter a rewatch, which I hadn't watched since I was a kid on TV, and I really came to appreciate that series. Because what Yu Yu Hakusho represents is a period in Togashi's lifetime where he was like, Flagnards, if I don't produce the next Dragon Ball, I'm screwed. Because at that point in time, Togashi continued to bring out these series. Man's World of Romance, Man's World of Comedy, Man's World of Sci-Fi, and none of them would take off. And it was all these wonderful ideas and concepts that if you had given them time, he would have been able to create something great. But no, none of them worked. So in 1990, he was like, you know what? If whatever's working is Fist of the North Star, Saint Seiya, and Dragon Ball, I'm making a Saint Seiya, a Fist of the North Star, and a Dragon Ball, and y'all see what I'm gonna make. And then he created Yu Yu Hakusho. And he created, arguably, two of the most incredible arcs within the Dragon Ball style formula in the Dark Tournament and in Chapter Black within Yu Yu Hakusho. And Yu Yu Hakusho in and of itself is a magnificent story and truly one of the best series in that type of style, right? Even outside of that type of style, Hakusho to me is one of the greatest anime ever made. But that's just as a Togashi tart. I absolutely adore that series. But that era was him showcasing, all right, y'all don't want to give me my opportunity to tell a story I want to tell? I'm going to go into your playground, into your battlefield, and I'm going to show y'all how to do it because y'all telling me I don't know how to do it. So okay, I'm going to go make a Dragon Ball, and y'all see how I take care of business. And so after he created Yu Yu Hakusho and he gained the respect of fans, he gained the respect of those editors, he gained the respect of everyone around him, he was like, all right, now I'm really going to create what I want to write. And what I want to write is something extremely ambitious. I'm tired of reading all of these, or experiencing all these series that are just sticking to the same thing. I want to write something out there that is out there, but it's still within the same rules. It's still within the same category, still within the same demographic. It's in the same magazine, but I want to write something that no one else has done. And I love that ambition because I feel that. I feel like any creator feels that. Like you want to do something that's different. You want to do something that's new before everybody else does. But the thing is, before I had gone through Hunter x Hunter, my initial impression of like this whole freedom thing when it comes to writing, and something that really made me mad at times, was how I would hear certain reviewers and certain writers tackle the topic of freedom within writing. Like it always felt like somebody like you had to abide by these certain rules. And it really made me mad. Like I hate being told what to do. Like that's just the way I've always been, right? But especially, whenever you're trying to develop and grow as a writer, and you have all these people tell you, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't do X because it's not a part of rules. Like if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an author, you have to follow this set." And I'm like, then what's the point of doing this? If I can't within this very thing have my own freedom to write, then why do it? If I'm just going to create something that everybody else has done, then what's the point? But it's thanks to Hunter x Hunter that I was truly able to come into my own and say, you know what, I understand now. I understand what everybody was saying. And it was a life lesson, it truly was. Because whenever I went through Hunter x Hunter, I saw a series within the same magazine of my beloved One Piece, of my beloved Dragon Ball, of my beloved Bleach. And yet it was doing something extremely ambitious and yet so centered that I was like, Flagnards, like, why does this work so well? And it's because it's so restricted. It works so well because it is restricted. Within that same restriction, freedom was created. And I guess I truly came to that realization also whenever I rewatched Evangelion, and arguably my favorite scene, I don't think I love anything more than Blackbeard's speech. But another scene that I love just as much as that is the freedom scene in Evangelion. And it's because of the same thing. Because it's within those set rules, and it's within those set things that you are able to achieve true freedom in what it is that you want to do. And I feel like Togashi was such an ambitious person that if he did not restrict himself with rules and these regulations of the Shonen Jump magazine, then who knows what he would have done. I mean, it probably would have been something so ridiculous, just knowing how ambitious he is, that it might not have even been comprehensible. Because that's just the type of dude that he is, right? But because he was tied down by the rules and regulations of having to write for Shonen Jump, that's where I think Hunter x Hunter truly shines. Because you look at it and you're like, it's not supposed to be this way, but it is, and it works. It works. I'll never forget when I first finished York New, and I real deal thought about it because right after I finished York New, I came on here and I talked about it. I think it was episodes like 44 to 58. Because before that, I was marking out about certain things that happened in the auction house, and then I stopped recording that. I went on MLK Day, watched the entire arc. Then at night, I came back and I talked about it. But before I went to sleep that night, I still have the note on my laptop where I'm writing this, and I'm like, dude, this arc was truly carried by the villains. And I know that is a normal thing to happen in this medium, right? That an arc, especially like for a Dragon Ball style series, it is very normal for a villain to handle an arc, or villains, like an organization, and like the Rancor saga, the Akatsuki, Naruto, whatever the case may be. I had been used to seeing organizations take over arcs in the way that it's handled. But what I did not anticipate was the way that it was executed. See, you can have the idea, you can have the concept, but the execution can be entirely different. And that's what I love so much about York New City. Because York New City is arguably the greatest page turner ever. I don't think I've ever gone through episodes in the manner that I went through. That and Shogun Assassination, dude. Like, just going through it, and Water 7, you're just going through it. It fell down. Whatever. But you catch my drift. York New, it gets you so immersed and so into it, but in the way that it's executed is so unique. Because it's like, you're never following it strictly from Gon's perspective, which is the whole reason that we came here in the first place. Neither from Kurapika's perspective. A lot of the majority of that arc, you are looking at it from the Phantom Truth's perspective. And usually in an arc like that, the thrill behind the mystery aspect and the thrill behind the chase is not knowing what the villains are going to do next. In York New City, you know what they're going to do next, and that's exactly what makes it so exhilarating. Because you know where the Phantom Truth are going to go. You know where Gon Freaks is going to go. You know where Kurapika and Melody and Gang's going to go. But it's because that you know, and you're following through all these different perspectives, that it makes it so much more thrilling. Because you're like, flag darts. It's where the tension really starts building up. And I just love the way it was executed, because I had never seen it done in that manner. And in a lot of other series that I hadn't experienced up until that point, you saved the main villain until last. Crollo was out here boxing dudes middle of the arc, and I was like, hold on. And I was like, dude, I love this. Like, it's fantastic. And of course, for me as somebody who really, really adores villains in general, Hunter x Hunter was a breath of fresh air, man, because I was like, flagnards. Because for so long, especially after I got into One Piece, bro, because even though I love all the villains in the series, and they're like, take up a majority of my top 10, Luffy was the first character in a long, long time or the first main character that I loved more than the villains. Up until then, my favorite characters were Cell and Kurama / Toguro, Shishio, like all those characters, freaking what was his name? Zex Marquise from Gundam Wing. Like, I was just always on the villain side. But then Luffy changed that, and ever since then, I started looking at it from like, man, I kind of like these main characters. And then that changed again whenever I got into Berserk, and I started really liking Griffith. But then I was like, dude, when I got into Hunter x Hunter, after the moment I saw the Phantom Troop, I was like, oh, these are my dudes. these are my dudes, bro. And I'll never forget, after watching episode 51, which is still one of my favorite episodes of all time in anything, and just finishing that episode and being like, by the Flagners, what a genius series this is, man. Like, what a genius series this is. Making me truly feel for this character, knowing what they did right after that. And it's just putting layers on a character you absolutely know nothing about, and we still don't know much about. But that's what makes him so interesting. Because you want to know what leads them to make these decisions, but all you see is the decisions being made and the actions upon their face and how they feel as an individual doing those actions. And it was so marvelous. I adore that arc. And then after that, man, Greed Island, bro. Listen, man, this man Togashi's so ambitious that he wrote Dragon Quest Yu-Gi-Oh! In his series. Dragon Quest Yu-Gi-Oh! And the entire arc isn't even about the Dragon Quest Yu-Gi-Oh! The entire arc is about Gold and Killua's relationship, because it's about to be turned apart in the Chimera Ant arc. I love Togashi, bro. I truly, truly do, man. I do. Because seriously, like, when you look at Greed Island, I mean, first thing I think of is the wahoo, you know what I'm saying? That reason's great. But when I look back at Greed Island, one of the things that still sticks out to me this very day is, of course, the setting where it takes place and how Togashi actually managed to balance all these card systems. Now, we know he's a Master Dragon Quest fan, and we know that he's probably delved into his D&D and whatnot, so he probably knows his side of the spectrum over there. And at the time, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the most popular thing on the planet, so of course he was probably playing that as well, and he wanted to capitalize on that. Greed Island, I believe, came out over there in 2001, 2002. So at the time, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was most certainly the most popular thing worldwide. And, or not the most popular, Dragon Ball was, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Was up there with, like, Pokemon and Dragon Ball and whatnot. But it was the hot commodity. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a new thing. It was a new kid around the block. Everybody loved it. Everybody wanted to be it. And so Togashi took it on his own and made it an entire arc out of it. But that arc is so marvelous to me. To this very day, it's in the profile picture. It's not even my favorite arc in the series. I don't even think it's in my top 3. but I still adore it a lot because it expands upon the legend of Jing Freaks in a way that I always adore out of a character like that. And then within the context of the characters within the arc itself, it really develops their relationship to a different level. Because within that arc, you truly get to see just how much Gon and Killua care for each other, and how their friendship truly is like in there like swimwear. And you see all of the stuff they had gone through up until this point in time, and what's led them to this point. And it truly is the determination as friends that really gets them out of that whole entire debacle in the first place with Genthru and the whole bomber squad. So Greed Island, even though like all over, the first thing I think was the setting and whatnot, but to me, you know, thinking back to those little moments with Gon and Killua playing around with Biscuit is really what drives that arc for me. And just with how incredible Togashi is as a storyteller and setting up plot and setting up his arcs in a way to where they're really, really immersive and gets you really invested. Greed Island is really tame in that aspect. Greed Island is very, very tame in comparison to the arcs that surround it, like a Heaven's Arena, like a Chimera and a York New, and I would even dare say the 13th Chairman election arc. Greed Island is very, very tame. Greed Island really, truly allows you to just focus on the relationships at hand, the characters, and the setting. And it's the balance of having that arc in the middle of these two massive arcs that is really, really interesting. And I just, every time I look back on Greed Island, and I know that it gets lost in the shuffle sometimes because it's in between the two masterpieces, but that arc is truly, truly great, and it's great in its own right. And every time I go back and I experience it, I remember why it is that I really enjoyed. So, plus it has the greatest volleyball game of all time. I apologize, Haikyuu. I love me some Haikyuu, dog. But when you have Razor taking on Hisoka, Gon, and Killua, and my boy Gon is out here wearing a headband like he's out here playing Gintoki in the Joy War, then you know he's a legend. You know that it's legendary. But then after that, man, comes the arc that truly set the series apart for me. I mean, it was kind of already on the level anyway. In York New and Chimera Ant, to me, like I always say, whenever people ask me like which one do I prefer out of the two, it's very, very hard for me to differ, because they're just so different. But I feel like after really sitting on it, I feel like I prefer Chimera. I would dare say that the Chimera Ant arc is the most ambitious arc written not only just in Shonen Jump, but as far as I'm concerned, and as far as how many things that I've read up until this point, of course I have not read everything, but I think it is truly the most ambitious story arc that I have experienced in this medium thus far. I've just never seen a person take the liberties that he did while writing that arc. And let me just put all this into context for you, alright? I'm gonna put this all into context for you. Yoshihiro Togashi created Yu Yu Hakusho, to me at least. This is the way I interpret it. Because he wanted to prove to the guys up at Shonen Jump that he could do this shonen thing better than anyone. And so after that, they had the trust in him and whatnot, and he created Hunter x Hunter. And so he went throughout it, created some magnificent set pieces up until this point in time. But then he wrote Chimera. And the Chimera Ant arc didn't come out the same way Greed Island did. It didn't come out the same way York New did. It didn't come out the same way any of his other previous arcs did. The Chimera Ant arc came out at a very, very slow pace. And the arc itself is extremely slow paced at certain points in times, which is also a part of its charm. But Yoshihiro Togashi had so much faith in his ambition, so much faith in the end product, so much faith in everything that he was weaving together, that even though he knew, and I can only imagine, I did not go through the Chimera Ant arc fully weekly, even in the anime. Like, I got to it whenever it was in the Dragon Dive, or around that stuff was whenever I caught up to the anime. Well, maybe a little bit before that, but around that stuff was whenever I started talking about the anime weekly. And so I didn't experience the manga weekly. I can only imagine how it must have been for people who were experiencing Hunter x Hunter all the way back then, the manga weekly, only getting like 1 or 2 chapters, 6, 10 chapters at the max, like a year, right? When it comes to this, especially with how slow that arc was up until that point in time. I can only imagine how people must have felt going through that arc at that point in time. and especially like over in the Japanese readers and whatnot, which is why this arc could have only been done after Togashi gains the trust of the Shonen Jump editorial staff. Because after he wrote York New and after he wrote Grid Island, which are both very, very popular arcs, he must have been like, you know what? Okay, they ain't gonna boot me out, so I'm gonna write my most ambitious arc yet. And even with all those hiatuses, which, as somebody who is in this medium, and I'm sure for anybody else who's into content creation as well, of any type of content creation, art, or whatever, you will leave that thing for a long time. It takes a while to get back into rhythm, man. It takes a very, very long time to get back into the rhythm. A very long time. I have talked to people who don't know about the anime community, who have experienced Hunter x Hunter, who say the Chimera Ant arc is the greatest thing they've ever experienced, and to them it's just one story. They don't know about the hiatuses. They don't know about the fact that Yoshihiro Togashi took almost 10 years to write that arc. They don't know about the fact that the Chimera Ant arc came out at 10 to 15 to 5 to 3 chapters at a time in a year. They don't know about that, man. They don't know about that. And yet to them, the story flowed so perfectly well together. That, to me, shows such an incredible level of having your skill match your ambition. I mean, seriously, son. I think back to all the hiatuses I've taken from just YouTube, let alone writing. On YouTube, it's hard enough to get back to doing videos consistently after taking a hiatus. When it comes to writing, if you're not... when I stopped for a while, after I finished my first rough draft of my book, and I put it down, when I came back, my rhythm was out of whack. Hell, it might still even be out of whack, and I'm still... No, not anymore. I can confidently say, I think after this last thing, I'm back in rhythm, son. I'm back in rhythm. That's next to you, Mineko. But anyways. Yoshihiro Togashi, within this arc, was able to display that his skill can match his ambition to me. With all the hiatuses he took. And with all that being said, the way that arc was able to flow so well together, and the way that arc... Because I always hear people say, yeah, if you give anybody else the amount of time Togashi had to write an arc like that, anybody can make a masterpiece. That's not true. It's not true, man. It's really, really hard. It is really, really hard. Especially with those hiatuses. And the concept in of itself is so different. I still ponder the concept by itself of the Chimera Ants. And the way he was able to pull that off and not have any of it feel like it's out of place is magnificent to me. Which is why I feel like Chimera Ant could only work as an arc that takes place after all of the set pieces in the series have been set in stone, with things such as Nen, seeing how the world is at scale thanks to Grid Island, being able to see how things are at scale when it comes to power and abilities and the true extent of Nen in York New City. You get this arc right here. In the Chimera Ant arc, you're truly able to see the extent of so many things that you have learned about in this series, but it feels like it's a brand new world. It doesn't even feel like the same series at times, going through the Chimera Ant arc. And just the amount of level when it comes to the attention to detail of certain character intricacies and certain themes that are put within certain characters and certain plot threads that become relevant, or that were introduced in the beginning and become relevant way later on within a character that isn't even related to that very same character. I mean, there are certain things that are introduced earlier on in that arc that become relevant for other characters, like let's just say a Welfin, right? Or a character of like an Ikalgo. You know, certain themes that have stuck through the thin and thin and have gone through what was originally the human characters and then going on to the Chimera Ant characters. And I've always been a fan of role reversals. I've always been a fan of series that, or a series, let alone an arc, that takes the concept of what you're initially doing, and when you start it off, you're on one side, and then by the time you get to the end of it, you're on the completely other side. And what I love about this arc is that this arc does it in such a magnificent way to where you don't even realize the role reversal's happening until the arc is finished. And you're like, oh, what a... like, yo! What a masterpiece, man. What a masterpiece. But even in the midst of all that, and even in the midst of having of an arc like this, truly making you think and having you think about how truly cruel we are as a human race, and just how things work when it comes to how we develop as people and how we expect other people to, or how we expect other people or things to be the same way that we are, even though they grew up in completely different circumstances, truly showing off how important individuality is when it comes to humans, how it gets demonized, but it truly is what makes us the powerful creatures that we are. And a lot of themes that truly just make you think, right? But in the midst of all that, because I'm a sucker for one particular thing, this arc has always stood out to me. From the moment that Komugi gets introduced into the story until the very end, I think that is what makes this arc slightly above Yorkin for me. The relationship between Meruem and Komugi is exactly what I've always wanted from any series that I've ever been a part of, or that I've ever experienced. It is the romance and rivalry concept, and it's something, especially now, I'm not going to spoil it. For those who have experienced a certain series, I'm going to talk about that very same concept in the future, because it is arguably my favorite concept, or rivalry in particular is probably my favorite thing, that and Chasing Dreams, but romance and rivalry. And it doesn't even have to be romance in terms of individuals wanting to get together or whatever the case may be. I'm talking about romance just in terms of adventure. Well, like just in terms of wanting to go out and find somebody as formidable as you and truly want to challenge them head on, and go at them non-stop until one of you comes out the victor. And both of you are like an equal playing field to where you come in as these certain creatures. You go through all of these incredible and amazing battles, and it changes them both as characters and as people. And by the time that they get out of it, it's a different result. And there's that mutual respect, whereas beforehand, I love that type of stuff, right? So I love sports anime so much. And the fact that that was introduced as just a mere concept in the Chimera Ant arc and became the main and growing thing of the entire arc by the end of it. One day, man. I mean, I have so many notes on that already. It's a video I wanted to make last year. But I feel like I have to make it now. I have to make it now because of what I've recently experienced. I have to make that video, man. Romance and rivalry, ladies and gentlemen. My favorite thing ever. Ever, son. That's why I love Gitoki and Sugi so much and whatnot. But that Meruem and Komugi's relationship and how they, Komugi comes in as this character that's just here to entertain Meruem, in order for him to pass time until the day of legend comes, and he's able to truly become the king of the world. But before he was able to, or before he met Komugi, he wasn't thinking about being the certain X or certain Y. That happened because he met Komugi. But to that point in time, all he had in mind was world domination. And one thing about Meruem when it comes to him going out and really wanting to be the best at whatever it is that he is I think something that a lot of us can relate to. At least I know I can relate to, which is why I can relate so much to Chihaya from Chihaya Furu. She is one day we'll talk about Chihaya. Soon. Meruem is a character that he carries those same type of ambitions that you normally see from like a sports main character from a sports anime or something like that, where they want to go out and they want to become the absolute greatest at whatever it is that they want to do. But in Meruem's case, he already is that. Meruem's case, he starts at the top. Meruem starts at the top, and yet he has that same level of ambition at the top as somebody would at the bottom, because he just came out the womb. So he's ambitious, he's hungry, he wants to prove that he is this king everybody says he is. He wants to prove, and he wants to be the greatest at absolutely everything. He truly wants to be the king of the world in the biggest sense. And so whenever he finally meets a creature in which he cannot defeat in a single game, because before that he had tried multiple games, multiple different things that he could possibly be the greatest at, and all of them worked. He's like, man, this is easy. I'm getting bored of this. But whenever he met Komugi, he finally found an equal, and he finally found something that he could work towards. He finally found something that he was not the greatest at, and he went time in and time again and time in and time again wanting to be the greatest at that. And within that goal within that, and within his own personal steel ball run journey, he was able to come out of that a completely different person. He was able to learn compassion for this rival and this person that he had grown to play several games with. He had grown to truly appreciate effort coming out of another side of the playing field. He had come to know appreciation and understanding of going through an intense battle against someone else, which he displays within the Netero fight. And all these different things that start within that part of the arc and then become relevant whenever you see them later on, like in episode 112, 122, and of course in episode 135. And in leading up to that, to the stuff with Welfin and whatnot, like, I just love how Togashi was able to introduce and give us this character arc of Meruem, but do it in a way to where it really is a human character arc. I mean, it is a main character arc. When you look at Meruem's character and you think about, you just put it in perspective of, okay, if Meruem had not been the top already, if you would have started at the bottom, his character arc literally would have been a regular main character arc. The only difference is that he already started at the top. So Togashi flipped it. He said, all right, instead of making it to where I'm going to show like an actual, because you normally in stories you have certain characters where, okay, if X had gone this way, they could have been the main character. Togashi, what he did with Meruem, because of course with the role reversal thing, and him and Gon never meet, and I know, trust me, I know that's not what they are. But I'm focusing specifically on when it comes to the fact that Meruem starts at the top. Meruem has that same level of hunger as ambition as one would have at the bottom, solely because he was just born into the world. My man just came into this, and I feel like your ambition and your hunger is at its strongest whenever you first enter said world. I shouldn't say that. I feel like it's most fresh, because of course your ambition continues to stay strong, but it's at its most fresh whenever you're first being shown everything. You're like Flagnar. It's like, yo, I want to do this. I want to go out there. It's like whenever you first start a channel, you first start your book, or you first start your art project, or whatever, or you first start dancing, whatever the case may be. There's this whole new world available to you. That's how it was for Meruem. This whole new world to just explore and see. And it's just amazing to me how he was able to do it in the way that he did. Because when you look at Gon Freaks, Gon from the beginning of the series, even though he does have certain levels of compassion, he still wants to be the winner at every single thing that he does. And he gets very, very upset when he's not. Which is why he always wants to learn and wants to be better at everything that he does. That's Meruem! Of course he's not going to go out and kill him. I mean, well, he did. But he did. But that's the wonderful thing about this series, and in the way that that Togashi writes his characters and how they connect with certain things that become relevant later on in this series. And I know it's something that is brought up in other series, and I know a lot of other series love to take that sort of strategy and sort of way of doing things. But I feel like where the Chimera Ant arc, specifically Togashi's writing, is in its execution, man. The way that the series is executed. In terms of these concepts that we're so familiar with, and yet because it feels like it's not the same thing, but in reality, man, it truly is something very similar to what we experience in a regular Shonen Jump story. It's just the way that it's executed. It's done so well and so marvelously that it feels like something that should not be there. And I think that's where the ambition truly shines, and I think that is where you truly get to see just how skilled Togashi is, and the fact that he was able to write an arc like that, and an arc like the 13th Chairman election arc, and an arc like the current arc in the Dark Continent, as in, he's able to write these arcs because he already established that trust with the audience. He was able to establish that trust with the editors too. They know what he's going to write is going to be gold. They know that whatever he's going to write is going to be incredible, and they have given him the freedom to do so. The freedom within those rules and regulations to create whatever it is that he wants to. And Togashi takes full advantage of that freedom to truly create some marvelous and unique experiences. But he would not have been able to do that if it wasn't for the previous things that he had already set in stone to be able to do that. And that was a big learning process for me, man, because for anyone that starts off, you want to be like a Meruem. You want to start off and be like, yeah, I want to be creative, I want to be unique. But no, man, you have to take those stepping stones. You have to step in with, touch the water a little bit. You have to learn the intricacies, the ins and outs of doing certain things. And then after that, you can truly let the creativity blossom. You can truly let the ambitions blossom. Because now you have the trust. Now you have the trust within yourself, and hopefully you have other people that trust in you as well. And now you're truly free to create whatever it is that you want. That is what I learned from Hunter x Hunter. And I'm so glad I learned that, because since then, I mean, you know, I have had this dream for a long time. And it was thanks to One Piece that I was able to amplify it and truly bring it into reality. But whenever I got into Hunter x Hunter, it opened up a whole new world of saying, you know what? I'm not going to shame, or I'm not going to get mad at those people who tell me that I'm outside of the rules anymore. It's better off if I stay within these rules, because if I stay within the rules, I'll be able to create my own freedom within those rules that makes it feel like I'm not in those rules in the first place. Then I'll really be free. I don't know if y'all understand what I'm saying. I don't even know if I understand what I'm saying. But all I know is that it's coming from up here. And and that's just the way that I feel. It really, really is. And I think that's where my appreciation for Togashi and Hunter x Hunter comes from. It's the fact that it really impacted me in terms of what I want to be in the future. Or what I want to be right now, I should say. And what I'm hopefully, truly, step by step going towards. But a real deal started from there. And then on the YouTube and the anime manga side of things, after I experienced Hunter x Hunter, I just wanted to experience something else as great as that. I was like, you know what, man, let me find something else like Hunter x Hunter. And since then, I found so many marvelous anime and so many marvelous manga that I've been able to go through, especially that year. Like, after I experienced Hunter x Hunter, I went through this year and a half where or I should say like 2 years after that, where I just experienced so many incredible series. So many incredible series, man, in both the manga and the anime side, which I will be talking about in the coming weeks. Y'all have an awesome day, man. I really just want to come on here and talk about why it is that I love this series so much, and the Hunter x Hunter greatness. It's definitely a much longer video than I anticipated it being, but hey, man, that's where we're here. That's where we're here, is to talk about some awesome sauce, and I truly do hope that that Hunter x Hunter can come back one day and we can continue to discuss the current events, man. But for right now, man, that's it for me, yo. Y'all have an awesome day. The decade of greatness continues on. Hunter x Hunter 2011. I will always be grateful, and I'll always love this series, man. Have an awesome day. Take care. Togashi, baby.